2 citizen representatives appointed by the mayor to be announced, 2 citizen representatives appointed by council to be announced. The Solid Waste District Executive Director, Beth Biggins-Raymer, and the RRS consultant, Aaron Olton. This is a balanced approach with City Council, administration, and citizen stakeholders all at the table providing input. We are currently compiling information requested by the Solid Waste District in preparation for the kickoff meeting. I ask that Council select its 2 citizen representatives in the next week or so to keep the project on track. All University Heights residents may expect to receive a mailer this summer with instructions on how to respond to the survey. Results will be delivered to the Solid Waste District and to the city by the end of August, with report made at City Council in September. On behalf of residents, I appreciate the assistance of the Cuyahoga County Solid Waste District, their willingness to help, and all courtesies extended. And I look forward to working together on this project to accurately survey the people of University Heights. Since the last meeting, administration took a meeting with Guide Studio, who helped the city rebrand itself in 2018, and who designed the new signage in 2019 for the Priority 1 sign program. With the sign program in the 2022 budget, Guide Studio is reviewing the program's scope and the proposed bid sheet. We may be ready as soon as the next council meeting to seek council consideration for going out to bid. Following up on council approval at the last meeting, the city has given notice to Kimball of its intention to exercise the option year in the recycling contract, and notice to Republic BFI to exercise the option in the rubbish contract. The new Kimball rate for processing bagged recyclables effective October 1st will be $101.85. As for Republic, they are willing to extend, however, a drafting error in the contract has been noted. The bid figure for the option year properly reflected a 50-cent increase in the county fees effective January 1, 2023, which raises the option rate from $42.44 to $42.94 a ton as of that date. At an extra 50 cents a ton from January 1 to September 30, 2023, at an estimated 3,750 tons, this is an estimated additional $1,875 in fees. At the next council meeting, administration will seek council approval for the correction. Last Friday, we celebrated Lieutenant Mark McCarter's law enforcement career on the occasion of his retirement. He has been with the city of University Heights since July 20, 1989. Over the years, Lieutenant McCarter served as the DARE officer, served on the SWAT team, served as the administrator of the Office of Community Policing. Since 2017, Lieutenant McCarter has served as the lieutenant overseeing the Uniform Patrol Division. From fingerprinting to acting as vehicle pursuit investigator to oversight of traffic, bike, and auxiliary units, and the school crossing guards. Lieutenant McCarter was a dedicated and widely admired public servant. At a time when fewer people are choosing law enforcement as a profession, we could use more people like Lieutenant McCarter, who served with honor, compassion, and distinction. We wish Mark McCarter good health and many years of happiness to come. Last Friday, Cleveland Heights Mayor Khalil Sarin joined me in the planting of an Arbor Day tree, a red sunset maple. When mature, this tree should be 45 to 50 feet tall. In the fall, its leaves should be red and orange, blending to give a sunset effect. This tree is our census tree. The community will recall the friendly wager between our cities that we made during the 2020 census. In an effort to promote responses to the census, our cities made a bet about which city could better improve its census response rate. And while University Heights did well overall, Cleveland Heights made the bigger improvement during the month of June 2020. And thus, University Heights provided the tree to be planted in Cleveland Heights within view of University Heights. All University Heights houses across the street from the tree by the Delisle Center, the facility of our shared public school district. In previous Arbor Day celebrations, I recited poems by Wendell Berry, Philip Larkin, and Joyce Kilmer. Friday was the first Arbor Day tree planting I've participated in since Neil Peart passed away from cancer on January 7, 2020. As many know, Peart was the drummer and principal lyricist for the band Rush, and so I recited his lyrics to the trees. There is unrest in the forest. There is trouble with the trees. For the maples want more sunlight, and the oaks ignore their pleas. The trouble with the maples, and they're quite convinced they're right, they say the oaks are just too lofty, and they grab up all the light. But the oaks can't help their feelings if they like the way they're made, and they wonder why the maples can't be happy in their shade. There is trouble in the forest, and the creatures all have fled, as the maples scream oppression, and the oaks just shake their heads. So the maples formed a union and demanded equal rights. The oaks are just too greedy. We will make them give us light. And now there's no more oak oppression, for they passed a noble law. And the trees are all kept equal by hatchet, axe, and saw. May the census tree grow and thrive as the communities of University Heights and Cleveland Heights continue to grow and thrive together in partnership for the mutual and common good. Tomorrow is Election Day, and Issue 20 is on the ballot. Issue 20 will make it easier for University Heights to hire police and firefighters. On May 3rd, University Heights voters will see a ballot issue with this language. Shall Article 7, Section 3 of the Charter of the City of University Heights be amended to allow the city's Civil Service Commission to enact rules to expand the number of permitted eligible candidates who may be appointed to open positions in the police and fire service? And what does that mean? A yes vote by a majority of voters would allow the University Heights Civil Service Commission to certify as many candidates for the police or fire department as it deems necessary when hiring, or to create a rule to that effect. A no vote would maintain the status quo. Currently, when police or fire need to make hires, the city charter restricts the Civil Service Commission to certify only 3 candidates out of all those who take the police or fire entrance exam. As a result, University Heights often loses qualified candidates to other cities. When we certify that list of just 3, we know that candidates have taken exams all over in other communities. We can certify for hiring 3 people and only then discover that all 3 people have taken jobs someplace else. Then we have to wait until the next meeting, perhaps a month later, and repeat the process again with another 3 people, only to learn that they too have taken other jobs, and so on. The Issue 20 charter change comes at a time when area communities are having a difficult time attracting candidates to take tests for police and fire jobs, which makes the pool of candidates from which area safety forces can choose even smaller. Issue 20 will allow the city to cast a wider net over the pool of qualified applicants and land new police officers and firefighters faster, and before they get job offers elsewhere. Issue 20 has the unanimous support of the mayor and city council. So please vote yes on Issue 20. Thank you. That concludes my report. Next on the agenda is reports and communications from the city council and the taking of action thereon. Mrs. Weiss?
Thank you, Mayor. The Tech Advisory Committee met to review an RFP for contracted services. I want to thank Councilman King for continuing this process, and we hopefully will have possibly another meeting. If not, it will be sent to council with a final version. We have a Finance and Strategic Planning Committee this week to continue to update internal controls and to complete a robust cash flow projection. And then finally, I would like to read into the record an email from a resident. This is Sean Belt, Canterbury Road. Good evening, Mayor and Council. He could not be here today. Thank you for the opportunity to talk trash and recycling. As a caring citizen, it's difficult to sit back and watch as our small city government continues to play at politics. As a pragmatic citizen, I wonder how we can make the situation work as best as possible for our future. With that in mind, here are a couple of recommendations. 1, please make both surveys available online. I bet you'll receive the most responses if you have the survey available in print and online. If I'm wrong, I will gladly pay up in the form of a knish from Jack's or some mac and cheese from LMA's. 2, please do everything in your power to cheerlead for both surveys. If you are to be believed when you say information from citizens is what is most important, then it doesn't matter what survey you support or don't support. Rather, the gathering of information is what is key. If both surveys go out to the community and any of you make a concentrated effort to bad talk one another or the survey, the results that are gathered will be treated as useless and we will be back at square one. If council or the mayor bad talk one or the other survey, you will have citizens who choose not to participate in one of the surveys because they want to support a specific government official. The results will be skewed, disbelieved, and useless. We cannot have that. You must cheerlead for both surveys. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any other reports or communications from the City Council? Okay, seeing none, then we will proceed with the item 8, reading and disposition of ordinances, resolutions, motions, and consideration of agenda items. The first is letter A, Resolution 2022-26, resolution proclaiming May 2022 Bike Month in the City of University Heights. And given the nature of the resolution, we will read it for the record. A resolution proclaiming May 2022 Bike Month in the City of University Heights. And whereas bicycling is a sociable, healthy, green, and economical mode of travel. And whereas, since 2010, the United States Department of Transportation has adopted a policy stating that walking and bicycling are considered as equals with other transportation modes and not an afterthought in roadway design. And whereas the state of Ohio recognizes bicycles as valid vehicles for use on all University Heights roads, and whereas University Heights streets and buildings are ideally arranged in a compact, well-connected pattern, making it easy to walk and bike to businesses, schools, and recreational and cultural facilities. And whereas University Heights continues to assess its transportation network and connections to other cities, finding grants for projects that improve the safety and comfort of bicyclists, such as the recently completed bike lanes on Orangeville Center Road. And whereas educating cyclists on the proper and safe operation of bicycles and motorists on how to properly share roads with bicyclists, including our school children, is important to ensure the safety and well-being of all. And whereas the League of American Bicyclists, Bike Cleveland, the Heights Bicycle Coalition, and transportation and fitness bicyclists in University Heights and other cities are promoting greater public awareness of cycling during the month of May through events such as Bike to Work Week on May 16 through 22, Bike to Work Day on Friday, May 20th, 2022, and Bike to School Day on May 4th, 2022, which brings attention to the importance of creating safe routes to schools. And whereas the annual Ride of Silence will take place in Greater Cleveland on Wednesday, May 18th, 2022, in which University Heights will participate with hundreds of other cities internationally to honor those killed or injured while riding on public streets, and can be observed by joining participants who will ride from John Carroll University in University Heights to University Hospital, where they will join other Cleveland area riders for a memorial presentation. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Council of the City of University Heights, Ohio, that Section 1, the Mayor and City Council do hereby proclaim May 2022 to be Bike Month in the City of University Heights. This city encourages all residents to review the laws and regulations governing bicycle safety and to use a bicycle for transportation, especially for trips within the City of University Heights. Section 2, notice of passage of this resolution shall be given by publishing the title and abstract of its contents prepared by the law director once in one newspaper of general circulation in the City of University Heights and on the city's social media. I'd like to thank Councilperson Brian King for working with our Clerk of Council, Mrs. Thomas, to get this year's Bike Month resolution prepared as we pass it annually and make an ongoing tradition of recognizing May as Bike Month. And I understand also that, Mr. King, that you are leading the local effort on Ride of Silence. I hope you'll say a few words about that. You have the floor.
Yeah. Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you for introducing this resolution for the 5th year in a row. I appreciate that. The Ride of Silence, I'll be leading that ride from John Carroll University on May 18th. It's celebrated, or not celebrated, but it is observed across the country and internationally on the same date. So we're looking at hundreds of cyclists coming together across greater Cleveland area, and we will ride in complete silence to university hospitals, and we will have a remembrance ceremony there. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. What time does that start? What time is the meetup at John Carroll on the 18th?
Yes. The meetup is at 6:30. We will leave at 6:45 and plan to arrive at 7:15. I will lead anyone back who needs assistance finding their way back.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments about this year's resolution for Bike Month? And if not, is there a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. King. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Mr. Cooney. Any discussion on the motion? Let's see. Seeing none, Mrs. Thomas, we call the roll.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Blankfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Okay, very good. Motion carries. Thank you. Next is item B, ordinance 2022-23, authorizing the transfer of funds from the General Fund 100 to the Street Maintenance Fund 200, Payroll Stabilization Fund 299, Facilities Improvement Fund 411, and declaring an emergency. This is on emergency. Mr. Kennedy, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. These are 3 transfers that were included in the permanent budget that Council approved in March. The first is a transfer to the Street Maintenance Fund that will supplement the revenue that's received in that fund, which is from motor vehicle registrations, motor vehicle tax, and gasoline tax, and that will help fund the annual street program that was included in the budget. The next transfer is an annual transfer to the Payroll Stabilization Fund, which is the fund that's set aside for the extra pay period that happens once every 11 years. So that'll then provide that with additional funding so that in that 11th year, hopefully there will be no additional burden on the general fund. And the last is a transfer that was included in the budget, which will go to the Facilities Capital Improvement Fund, and that will support any ongoing expenses related to architecture, engineering, planning, and so forth in regards to the facilities plan for the city. So again, these were all included in the budget. They're coming from the general fund, and ask that they be an emergency so I can get those down to the county pronto. Be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Are there any questions for Mr. Kennedy? If not, is there a motion to approve on emergency?
So moved on emergency.
Okay, very good. Motion to approve on emergency by Mrs. Weiss. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by, was that Mrs. Sacks?
Yes.
Very good, thank you. Any discussion? We'll take 2 votes. First on the suspension of the rules. Mrs. Thomas, we call the roll.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Blankfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
And then on the main motion.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Blankfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Very good, motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Next is item C, ordinance 2022-23, authorizing the I'm sorry, 2022-24, authorizing the transfer of $10,000 to the University Heights City Beautiful Corporation for use in funding the performance of a solid waste survey of city residents and declaring an emergency. This is on emergency. Sponsors are Vice Mayor Weiss and Councilperson Gould. Who wants to present?
I'll start.
Okay, very good, Mrs. Weiss. You have the floor.
Yes, so as the mayor alluded to, council does have a survey that is ready to go. Councilman Gould and I actually asked for a meeting a week and a half ago with the mayor to discuss moving forward with this survey or other compromises, and we were denied a meeting. We are all trying to come to a conclusion based on what the best way to pick up refuse is. Councilman Gould and I were discussing, he is the past service committee chair, on how to move the survey forward after the last meeting. And with direction from the law director, council has the ability to transfer funds. It is from the council's line item. It does not come from any other operating dollars. It will be transferred to the CIC, which is a community investment corporation, which has the best interest of the residents. That is what the purpose of the nonprofit organization is. And I just want to stress again, this is an unbiased survey that does not include any types of assessments or taxes. It is to simply see where the residents' appetite is, whether they would prefer backyard or curbside. I'd like to, Mr. Gould, I know has a few words.
Thank you. I think we've been fairly clear for the better part of the past year of the survey and the content of that survey and why we needed it and what we wanted it to say. It hasn't gone out yet, and in consultation with the law director, we found a way to do that. So we're moving ahead with that. I think it's in the best interest of the city as a whole. I think it's in the best interest of the residents. Frankly, I think at the end of this process, we may very well be at the proposed resolution of curbside pickup that has been advocated by some for some period of time. But I have been clear multiple times that I'm not willing to vote on that solution or any solution that would switch to curbside without this survey being sent out. So for those reasons, I'm ready to move ahead. I want to really stop bickering about this back and forth. I would like the survey to go out and to get the data back and to be able to move on from this issue. I think if anything from the past several months has shown us it is something that we are all prepared for as the people that we represent.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gould. Any questions or comments? Mr. Kuhn.
What's the line item in the budget that the $10,000 is coming from?
We have it's actually in the ordinance. So we have a miscellaneous, council has a miscellaneous expense item, and there's another miscellaneous. I don't know, Mr. Kennedy, do you have it offhand? I know there's two miscellaneous items in the council revenue. So, and we're not even using all of it.
The language in the ordinance is in section 2, which indicates the fund transfer authorized herein shall be from council discretionary funds accounted for in fund balance line items 100-1620-53090 and 100-1620-53690, and those presumably are existing fund balance items.
All right. Very good. Mr.
I'm
Kuhn,
sorry,
you still have the floor.
What's the amount that was budgeted that Mr. McConville had referenced?
Vehicles to section 2.
And one was 14,000. I think the other was 7,000. That was in there.
I'm sorry, I'm not seeing the balance of the budget. I think you're looking to go on here.
53090
53090.
and 5 53690.
53090 is miscellaneous supplies.
Yes.
53690.
There's a budget of, for 2021, I'm sorry, 2022, $7,776, is that correct?
Right, and that's why we had to have 2 line items, so we're probably not even going to use the full 10, but
53090, what's the other one, please?
53690.
Miscellaneous equipment. $14,483. And there was a survey that had been put together but was not distributed, and that was paid for.
yes.
And what was the cost of that survey at that time?
$500?
Approximately $500. That was the design portion of that.
We paid that to Mr. Sutton.
Dr. Sutton.
And did you also, Dennis, how, if at all, did you note the encumbrance of the survey mailing that was authorized by council in June? Is that already in the budget, or was that not encumbered by you?
That has not been encumbered yet.
Okay. So the authorization was had by ordinance, but you didn't place that into the budget as a whole somewhere?
From last year.
Correct, from June of last year.
Right.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that wasn't hanging out somewhere.
Mr. Kennedy, at the special meeting of August 18th, wasn't there a motion to limit a cost not to exceed $500 for Dr. Sutton and Baldwin Wallace for the survey?
I'm sorry, Mayor, you're talking about last August?
Yes, August 18th.
I believe there was a motion for payment to Dr. Sutton for that $500, because that was still outstanding.
Okay, thank you.
And what would the 10,000, what seems significant, that's the cost to have the survey
So
completed, or
it
created?
probably, so it probably will not reach 10,000. It'll probably be more to the $5,000 to $7,000. However, we wanted to make sure so we wouldn't have to come back to council for additional funding. The CIC can always put money back into the council budget. That would, the organization that Dr. Sutton works for would do all the collating. We would have an online piece as well, and he would also bring the data back to and discuss the data.
So it's for the creation of the survey, managing of the data?
Distribution.
It's already created.
So, if I could just clarify, so initially, Dr. Sutton came to council and we had approved a process by which we would create a survey design. It was a design process. Then there was a mailing phase, and then there was to be an analysis phase. And so what we did when the survey came out and was finally approved, it wasn't sent out, you hadn't been paid for the design phase. So there was later a portion of limited $500 to make sure he got paid and direct that he get paid because he hadn't had a check cut to him yet.
Okay.
And then in June of that year prior to that, we had approved an amount for the actual mailing of the survey such that if the mayor had sent it out or chose to send it out, he would have been spending money that was authorized by council. So now instead of doing that, we're having it sent to CIC. And this account will be, the presentation as Vice Mayor White said was approximately $7,000. The majority of that's going to be postage. One of the concerns that we had about sending it out was doing only a cyber survey, and they're just members of our community, specifically the members of our community, many of them who are trying to target with this survey and make sure we gather data on. They're not scanning a QR code, they're not going to a URL. If they get a flyer in the mail that has those things on, they're just not going to do it. And the city does not have a prepaid mailing insignia. So the mail that goes out has to have, you can lower the costs by having a prepaid insignia from an outside mailer at the initial mailing, but then each of the envelopes therein has to have a stamp on it so you can have it put back in the
Mr. Kearney, did you have anything further?
This time.
Okay.
Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Kearney.
I just wanted to say that I prefer the clean slate that the solid waste district survey offers. I prefer the price as well. No cost to the city. I will say though, both surveys go out, that I echo the sentiment of Mr. Belt from the email that the Vice Mayor read, that we should all support the surveys that do get sent out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2022-24, authorizing the transfer of $10,000 to the University Heights City Beautiful Corporation for use in funding the performance of a solid waste survey of city residents and declaring an emergency.
Also second.
On emergency. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Motion on emergency to approve by Mr. Gould, second by Mrs. Blankfeld. We'll call for discussion. I'll make a few comments. No solid waste professional was involved in council's draft survey, except for Mr. Picorni, whose input was disregarded. As the video from the last committee meeting on the survey shows, the committee wouldn't even call on him when he raised his hand. Without any questions regarding cost considerations in the survey, the council drafted survey is without context and is flawed. The solid waste district has seen the council drafted draft survey, and if they had found it appropriate to issue, if they had recommended that, then I would be inclined to follow that recommendation. But instead, they've assisted the city in finding a path to a better, proper, professional survey designed to collect good data upon which we may make good decisions. We now have an opportunity to use county money and county resources for a professional survey rather than council using city money. Our current sunken costs on the first council drafted survey is only $500. I recommend a no vote on this ordinance. This is an opportunity to move forward, create a solution, and resolve this issue finally. Thank you. Mrs. Blankfeld.
I think we have discussed this extensively. We have been at this for almost a year, maybe more. Mr. Gould and I made it very clear at the recent meeting that it will be left to our voters. It will be left to our residents. It will be left to the taxpayers. And I applaud Mr. Belt's suggestion that we not bash either survey, but let the residents have their say.
Mrs. Stevens.
Thank you. So this evaluation team,
Yes.
may I ask Councilman King, when were you notified and how were you notified?
The press release.
Okay, same thing. I just didn't know if that's just how it was. There was no discussion or invitation or anything. Okay.
Yeah, we sent an email to all of you.
I know an email, not a call or any discussion about it. That's what I was trying to clarify. Your comments just now, Mayor, felt like a bash. So right now, off the bat, Mr. Belt's email that was just applauded and commended has a negative comment from you that's not new, but it continues. So I'm not sure how that works.
Well, the council drafted survey is a flawed political artifact from the campaign season, and we should put it to rest and move forward. We really should. For the good of the city. And
disagree with Mr. Belt. You disagree with not bashing.
I don't believe I'm bashing at all. Zach's, I'm just stating a fact. You're free
Thank
to
you.
view it as you will. Thank you. Is there any further discussion on this issue? Mr. Kearney?
So the council, the survey from for the City Beautiful Corporation does not include any reference to costs as to what the current costs are or what they would be if there were to be, if we were to go from a backyard to a curbside pickup. Am I understanding that correctly?
If I may, the last meeting, I'm not sure you attended, but I think one of the clarifications that at least I noticed and articulated is, are we really talking about a cost savings or a cost shift? I think what we're talking about is what type of service do the residents want for their tax dollars? Do they want to use those monies to continue backyard collection, or would they yet rather use those monies by reducing labor, which is the bulk of the cost? There is some other cost, but that's the bulk, and redeploying them to do other service in the city. I believe that's really the question. It's not, do you want to reduce costs by changing our method of collection?
If you do change the method of collection, there are payments made for services that are provided because our service workers cannot complete them within a timely manner.
I understand, so that's the point. It's an exchange of service.
Mr. Cooney, please continue.
So, no, they're different. There are services, we hire outside contractors to perform services within the city at an additional expense on top of our current service workers because they do not have the bandwidth to complete it. If potentially, if a curbside pickup was implemented, those service workers, their time could be put to use to complete those activities, and that expense to hire an outside contractor would go away. Am I understanding that correctly? As was presented in the council meeting last night.
That was
Correct.
part of it. That, my understanding was the outside work contractors were because the current service personnel were not available to do it in a timely manner.
Correct. So therefore, if they do become available, if curbside pickup was implemented, then they could attend to those activities without, because you're not paying an outside contractor to come in to do that work.
Ms.
Yes.
Seth, if I could help answer that, you're assuming that the trash collector that goes to the backyard has the credentials, the training, and the equipment to do the repair work that we had outside consultation with. We don't have all the equipment to do some of those things, which is why we some things we do, some things we don't. But it also comes to a matter of education and training.
Right.
So we'd have to look at that personnel to see if they have that expertise and training to do those various functions.
There are some activities that currently are trained to do, and I believe Mr. McCorney at that time said it was approximately $90,000 in services we had to employ an outside contractor that could have taken care of in-house.
Sure, and then there were also things that Mr. McCorney outlined to us that we could shift that labor to do other things, but only temporarily through attrition. As people retire, we would not backfill those positions. And therefore, you would be going back to the drawing board of subbing that out to outside specialists. So you're never going to get ahead of this. I mean, it's not much of a cost savings. It's sort of irrelevant.
But my original question was, we were not including any reference to any costs that have incurred, and if that cost will continue in the future. And the survey that would come out for the City Beautiful, that might correct with that. There's no reference to any costs.
Can you repeat that?
There isn't a reference to any costs within the City Beautiful survey.
Mayor?
Is that
Well,
right?
no, but there's a reference that there was a study completed and that each individual participant can review the study, as they should be doing. That link, a web link is available on the survey, but we aren't going to sway somebody one way or another based on, you know, for instance, one question that wanted to be added was,
Do you mind if I read them?
Well, I just,
actually, yeah, because and
That's
please
what I wanted to read.
bring the floor back to me because I have a suggestion about one of the questions, but please read the question that wants to be added.
So, just to answer your question.
Go ahead, Mr.
The questions that were removed from the survey were, per the study, continuing backyard pickup will cost more over time than moving to curbside automated pickup. Understanding that, which of the following would you prefer? Option 1, keep backyard pickup with an additional fee. Or 2, implementing curbside automated pickup with no additional fee. We also have a question about recycling costs, doing away with that. As you may know, the cost of recycling has increased due to lower market demand for recycled materials and restrictions regarding what can be recycled. Many cities that received revenue from recycling are now paying for this service. Based on this information, how important is it to you that the City of University Heights continues its recycling program? And the options that were removed were very important, even if it means added cost to the resident city. Second, very important, provided the cost to the city is not passed on to residents as an additional fee. 3, important to me, but uncertain as it involves a cost increase. And 4, not important to me. And there was a question again about recycling. Which statement more accurately reflects your view on recycling? Option 1 was lowest possible cost is more important to me than recycling. 2 was recycling is more important to me than lowest possible cost. Finally, there was a question regarding the 17, which was, would you support increasing funding to maintain the existing system of backyard pickup and curbside yard waste collection if it required either a mandatory household fee or raising the city income tax rate? The options were yes, maybe, no, and not sure. That question 2 was removed for the reasons that we outlined at the last meeting. 1, City Council by that time had already made a decision, irrespective of the costs, we're continuing recycling. It's done. We're not going back to the residents and asking them if they thought they wanted to do better with the program. We made that decision. And 2, no one on council was going to impose a trash fee. No one on council was going to increase taxes. So therefore, it seemed inappropriate to place those on the survey because of the opinion of Dr. Sutton. Those type of questions, if you ask somebody, do you want to keep this thing if I raise your taxes, or do you want to do away with it? They are apt to say, I think I'd not like my taxes to be raised. I'd like that other option. So that was the reason those questions.
All right.
So I can continue my thought now that you've read those questions. One of the questions, and forgive me for paraphrasing it, but it's alluding to either a tax increase or a small fee per resident if they want to maintain the backyard pickup. That's really the only option that was given in that question. But transitioning to curbside also has a tremendous startup cost. It's in the millions. We have to get trucks. They're $200,000 to $300,000 a piece. We have to get cans. So that sort of thing. The question was, would you pay a small fee or a tax to keep it? But I'd also like to know, if we're going to ask that question, would you pay a small fee or a tax increase to transition to curbside? Because it's going to be quite a costly endeavor for that startup. But when we were in the committee, we chose not to have any type of questions related to cost. Yes, no questions. I thought, well, what about something along the scale? Like, how much do you love backyard pickup? From way over here, I hate it. Let's do curbside too. I love it so much. I want to pay more taxes to keep it. Somewhere in the middle is probably where people are. And that's where I wanted to gauge as a decision maker, if we're going to get rid of the backyard pickup, where do people fall on that spectrum? But again, we're not going to discuss cost because we're just trying to figure out, gauge the temperature of what people feel. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Good. A few things I would say with regard to these things. One, so all the cost questions were cut. There was never any discussion or counter with respect to what might be an appropriate cost question. And Mr. Rock just mentioned one possible alternative cost question that could have been considered. It's also worth noting that at the
public meetings that we had in September and October of 2020 that numerous residents, Paul Miller among others, all expressed an opinion that they would be willing to pay an additional fee or pay more in order to keep backyard pickup. I don't think that's a good idea myself, but I think it is worth asking. I think it is worth asking the community if that's actually what they want. If we really want to know what the community wants, when we've heard people actually say that, it's not an unfair thing to ask. There may be different ways of putting it so it doesn't suggest a particular answer. But again, these things weren't discussed, they were simply cut. Now, I'd like to move on though to another point. Do the sponsors of this ordinance, or anybody else on council, have any kind of current proposal with regard to the mailing out of the survey, of the project scope of this or the cost of this? Any kind of survey management, data analysis, any kind of estimate from whoever it is you intend to have do it? And I mention that because I haven't seen one, and I don't think any of you have seen one, or if you have it, then I think it'd be good to get it out in the open now. And if we don't have it, well, I'd like to remind everyone, there are plenty of times that this council has tabled things because we don't have that sort of information in front of us. And if we're going to be consistent in for instance, making sure we have drawings or that we have numbers or that we've reviewed a contract, before we go and transfer $10,000 of the city's money, the public's money for something that we could get for free from the county, I think we ought to see that proposal. I think we ought to see what it is that we are considering buying before we go and transfer that money. Do we have that proposal? Does anybody have that here today?
You saw it as part of the packet from the time that we approved the $500. Not only was attached to the packet the scope of work that Dr. Tom Sutton had proposed to do initially. There was also emails from your communication director with estimates from the printer that the city often uses for mailing those items. Those are provided to council, they're on the public record, they're on the website. To suggest that you haven't seen them is just factually inaccurate. They were read into the public record. When you stated that these questions were cut without discussion, that is factually inaccurate. When you said that council did not call on Director Picorni in the meeting where the questions were finally decided, that is also factually inaccurate. When we're talking about the process, the reason I'm just so ready to move on and stop bickering about the back and forth is because I don't want to get into now another argument about whether or not people who've been picked on this committee are appropriate. You say council has representation. Council didn't pick its representation. Very respectfully, Mr. King, you're not council's representative to the sustainability committee. Council has not appointed a representative. You are a councilman on that representative. It is not a distinction without a difference. Council hasn't been asked to make an appointment. Those things are usually voted on by council as a whole. So while I appreciate the work that you're doing, please don't, I'm not trying to undermine that work. It's simply just inaccurate that you are council's representative to this. But again, I don't think that we need to go through the bickering and arguing about whether or not who should be picked to do what. I think you'd be a fine person to talk about these things with the solid waste district. Sherry, I think you'll do a great job talking to the waste district about these. You've done a tremendous job and done a lot of research. I just like to move past it. I think you'll be fine. We don't need to argue about who's on the committee and who should be there and whether or not council had any input on who's going there. I just want to be done with it. I want the survey to go out as we've approved it. And we've discussed all of those details previously on the record.
So no, you don't have a current set of costs. You don't have a current proposal. You don't have a current quote that you can show us here today. You're referring to things from a year ago.
I have everything that's on the record and has been placed on the record regarding the scope and content of the work that would be done. I think council is very aware of what would happen, and if anyone in council is not aware of what was going to happen, after almost a year of discussing it, after approving the initial costs for mailing it and then analyzing it, after sitting in public hearings regarding it going out, after sitting in public committee meetings, designing the survey with Dr. Sutton, with the mayor, with the service director, about the arguments that have gone on for the past year about what would happen, what we wanted to happen, about the conversations that have been had on the record as late as last meeting, about what we wanted to have happen, why we wanted to have it happen, and what we needed to have happen to pass this, then I'm certain a member of council could say so. And if there are enough of us who are confused about any of this after all of that, certainly we could table that, but I don't think that's what any of us, or the majority of us, would like to see happen here. I think we all want to move on. I think this is an option to allow that to happen.
And I think to that point, I'd like to call for the question.
Okay. Do you have a current commitment from Dr. Sutton to proceed with this work at the price that he quoted?
Yes.
You do?
Questions, we can call.
Okay.
For the questions.
All right, well, I look forward to seeing that. I note that the question's been called. Before I ask Mrs. Thomas to call the roll, I want to make sure that all comments have been exhausted. Very good. Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
And this is an emergency.
Oh, yeah, this is on emergency. So first we need to suspend the rules. Mrs. Thomas?
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Blankenship?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Nay.
And now on the main motion.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Blankenship?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Nay.
Mr. King?
Nay.
Okay, by a vote of 5-2, the motion carries and the ordinance is passed. Next is letter D, ordinance 2022-25, establishing a charter review commission, setting qualifications for members of such commission, setting forth the authority and duties of such commission, and declaring an emergency. This is listed on first reading. Mrs. Weiss, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. One of the issues that came up in our council retreat was to conduct a charter review. It's good practice to have one. We are nearing year 13 from our last charter review. The law director and I researched other cities, and the way this ordinance is set up is very similar to most of our neighbors in Northeast Ohio. This is a time-consuming but unbiased process, which is worthwhile for every city to undertake. I'm proud that this council and administration will be willing to undertake this review. The one thing I maybe want to ask the law director to review is there is a tight time frame. So once we approve this, there are, there's a process that needs to be followed, such as each council member and the mayor each have to choose one resident to be on the review committee, and then that committee chooses 3, minimum of 2 meetings every month. They will select their own head of the committee, and so forth. I'm not sure if the law director has any other comments.
My comment would be that if this goes through 2 readings, we probably should revisit the date that's in the ordinance for commencing their activities. It's currently listed as June 8th. That's easy enough to change. The process flows from an initial meeting where the body elects a chair. I believe they also elect a co-chair. They're required by the ordinance to meet 2 times a month. They're required to report back out to council within 120 days as to their progress. And then it's anticipated that any recommended revisions or additions to the charter will be on the ballot sometime in 2023.
Well, I think it's a very important process. I think a charter review is something that it's going to be a massive undertaking. It's going to be a lot of work, which is why I'm disappointed that there's been absolutely no discussion between the council and the administration over the particulars of this particular ordinance. The thing that I would point out is that this ordinance tracks very closely to the last ordinance passed in 2008 for a charter review. And for folks who weren't here in 2008, nearly all of the charter review amendments that were proposed failed in the community because for various reasons, perhaps. But one of the things that I would be cautious about doing is setting up a charter review that's nearly identical to the one that failed previously. This work is too important to not have it be successful, to not have a commission that is balanced and representative of the community. And, I don't want to see folks work on this, meet twice a month and work on this for the better part of a year, only to see most of the amendments fail. One of the amendments that failed is virtually identical to the issue 20 amendment that's on the ballot tomorrow. That was a good common sense amendment, but because the last charter review got so politicized, so many good amendments along with political ones were voted down, including one like that. Something like that could have been fixed over a decade ago, but for the way the process embarked. And I don't think we're off on a good foot on this, but there's still a way to make sure that we are. I would suggest that this be referred to committee in order to have the appropriate discussion and make sure that we're creating a charter review that will be successful in this community, that will result in good amendments that move the community forward and that everybody here can be proud to support. So I do suggest it be referred. Mrs. Weiss.
You were conferred by the law director about this, so you cannot tell me that you have no idea what this is all about. He had a lengthy discussion with you. He also researched many cities by my request on how they are set up, what their structure is in terms of dates, committee members, and we are 75% of the cities do it the way we do it. This is a good ordinance. This is something that I think the committee can learn from the past. And there is representation. I'm not sure how you can say there's not. Every single one of us, including yourself, get to choose a member, and those members get to choose 3 members. So you are 100% aware of this. This is not a surprise to you. And this is a good, solid ordinance based on other cities establishing the same review.
This was a surprise to me, Mrs. Weiss. And when I got it from Mr. McConville, I knew that there was talk about having a charter review, but why am I only seeing this now for the first time? And I understand he suggested to you that you call me, and you never called me. You never called me to discuss any of this. And it isn't that the members, if you look at this ordinance, it isn't as you say. The council will then take applications and pick the other 3. So city council picks 10 people and the mayor picks 1 person. And if you think that's balanced and equal, then let's switch that. I'll pick 10 people and you'll pick 1. I know that's not fair, and I really don't mean that we should do that. Let's find a way to have representation on the charter review that is balanced, that reflects the public. Other communities, yes, have different ways of doing this. I know that South Euclid elects their people.
I'm not sure what you're afraid of.
I have the floor right now, thank you very much. I know that Solon has a process where the mayor selects people and puts it before the council. I think that there is room here where everybody could pick somebody, but then we have a few more people that are chosen together in order to make sure that we have more balance and a better cross-section of the community. And I know that other communities like Maple Heights, the mayor picks more than 1 person to serve on the charter review. There are different ways that this is done, and I don't think that we have scratched the surface, really. I do think that what we've done is we've set this up in a way that kind of dooms it from the start based upon what happened last time. And I don't want to see that happen here. I don't want to see a politicized charter review that causes a whole lot of work to be done and then nothing is really accomplished at the end. That's what happened back in 2008. I don't want to see that happen again. Let's work together to make a charter review that we can all agree on.
Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Rowe.
So you go on to assume that in 2008 many of the initiatives failed and that they would fail again today, but what you're not taking into account is how many people have moved into the city in the last 10 years. I think you quoted, and I can't remember the percentage, but you quoted that a significant percentage of citizens in the city are new within the last 10 years. So they may have a different opinion. Furthermore, the format in which the vice mayor outlined, which each council member gets picked, again, when you say it's 10 to 1, that's not true because you're assuming that we all think alike and we're all going to have same-minded people. We just saw a moment ago, it was a 6 to 1 vote and then a 5 to 2 vote on a matter. We don't think alike. We're actually, our vote has been split many times in the last few weeks. So I don't foresee that being a 10 to 1 split. We're all different people who make different recommendations. I don't know who the vice mayor is going to recommend, and that's their choice. And we're going to vote and approve on the committee members, correct? When you bring up an appointment, it would still have to pass the committee vote. So it is done democratically, in my opinion.
We are co-equal branches of government, Mr. Rob. And I'm the only full-time city employee or full-time elected official, rather, here at the city. And under this provision, I get one appointee and the city council gets 10. I have no say on even the 3 that would be chosen separately from every elected official picking one, which I don't think is such a bad idea. But there needs to be more balance then for the remaining members. I don't see why that would be such an odd request. Mrs. Sands.
Thank you. On a smaller basis, and not quite as a 10 to 1, but a 6 to 3. It feels, well, the evaluation team you just spoke about for the survey feels like it has the appearance of being skewed. So.
Well, you know, if we want to go back to the survey, we've got 2 members of council who would be on that committee, along with 2 citizen representatives that would be picked by council. And then with that, there would be 2 citizen representatives picked by the mayor, and the mayor and the service director are on the committee. That's much more even than 10 to 1. Of course it is.
Please. Thank you.
Mr. Cooney.
This is my question.
Okay, this is one.
Thank you. I find it mind-boggling that every decision such as this has to be disputed and put in a light that it is going to be automatically confrontational and unfair. And is it possible for you to look at this as there are 8 of us and we each choose a resident? It's not an us against them kind of thing. It's not an imbalance. I don't understand why you choose to view it in that light. To Mr. McConville and Mrs. Weiss's point, many other cities do it this way successfully. It's just an observation. It's exhausting, but everything has to be a fight.
Well, Mrs. Blankfeld, can you list for me cities where it's an 11-member committee where 10 members are picked by council and 1 by the mayor?
I will leave that to Mr. McConville and Mrs. Weiss, who had that conversation and presented that. I have those. She has that.
For example, Maple Heights has 9 members, 1 appointed by each member of council, 1 appointed by all council, and 1 appointed by the mayor. Hudson, 7 to 11 members, all appointed by council. Cleveland Heights, 15 members consisting 1 appointed by each of the 7 members of council and the remaining 8 members selected by the council as a whole. Would you like me to continue?
No, in fact, there are ways that these are easily distinguished. Maple Heights, the mayor picks 2. I talked to the mayor of Maple Heights about it. Hudson doesn't have a strong mayor system, neither did Cleveland Heights at the time of either of those charter reviews. In Cleveland Heights, there was no mayor to pick. The mayor was the president of council. And in Hudson, the mayor that said all the stuff about ice fishing, he was a figurehead. He didn't actually have any kind of role in government other than apparently entertainment. So these are not on all fours at all.
The fact of the matter is, nobody is politicizing this except you. There is literally no issue here. You are making an issue out of nothing because you think everyone's out to get you every time. It's not true. No one on this council feels that way except you, and you are making an issue out of nothing.
for a week ago.
Well, then why don't you do something here to make this more balanced? 10-1.
Mayor, you wouldn't even meet with Councilman Gould and I to
And you didn't
discuss
call
it.
me. You didn't call me. Mr. McConville told you to call me and you didn't do it.
Excuse me, that's not what I
Wait,
just said.
wait a minute. I just want, I don't
Yeah, I'm
want to be
sorry to put
dragged
you in
into
the
the
middle of
middle
this,
of a political fight.
Yeah.
And I want to clarify for the record that I had conversation with Vice Mayor Weiss in which I expressed a concern that this kind of conversation might occur. And in response to that, I was asked to gather some data about charter review commissions. Mrs. Weiss did not review all of the data. There were perhaps 6 or 7 communities. The results are varied, but I do believe there's a community or two in there where the majority are council selections and there's a strong mayor. I know there's another community very close to ours where all of the members of the Charter Review Commission were elected. And there was one community, and I don't remember which one it is, where the majority of appointments were mayoral. But I do not have an opinion that I'm willing to express about what the composition of the Charter Review Commission should be. And I just want to make that clear.
No, thank you, Mr. McConville. And I don't think anybody was implying that you had an opinion or that you were putting your thumb on the scale in any way. So, and if anything I said made it sound that way, I apologize.
Well, I guess my concern is that I don't want there to be a perception that I'm trying to play one side against the other in private conversation. I am never trying to do that. And I guess that's what I want to make clear.
I would also like to state that I did have a conversation with Mr. McConville, and I asked him to speak to you on my behalf because I knew what was going to happen. You either would not take my call or you wouldn't listen to anybody else's side.
I'm scheduled to take a call with you on Thursday about another committee. We're going to talk about that. That's on your calendar, right?
I have a,
Yes,
I
Mr.
have a
Chairman.
question. My concern, one of the things that came out of the retreat for the council members is we had action items. And I will say Vice Mayor Weiss has been very proactive in trying to follow on some of those items. And this is one of them. I think all of us recognize that this is important, that it should be reviewed. It's been long overdue. And there are obviously issues that have occurred over the last several years that need attention. Some are minor and some are more significant. But I guess one of my concerns is in the question that it would be, we look for appointments for by June 2nd, and so they can begin on June 8th of 2022, is that it's a very tight timeline, essentially under 30 days. We've sought resumes and sought residents to appear in other committees we're reaching out 2 to 4 months in advance. I guess I'm wondering, what is there something that is driving this very tight timeline to find the appointments for June 2nd that we're looking down the road in 2020, because they want to be completed in 2023, which I understand we want to work sooner than later, but why such a tight timeline?
Yeah, so right at the beginning, Mr. McConville said we probably have to change those dates.
Okay.
It was too tight of a timeline.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I think that, ultimately the thing that should drive the timeline is the November 2023 election and the need to place something on the ballot for that election. I would recommend you get started sooner than later. It seems like a long time, but really when you're talking about committees that are meeting twice a month, it takes a while. It takes them a while just to develop a rapport before they can start really digging their teeth into the language. So certainly I think it can be delayed beyond June, but I just fair warning, you don't have as much time as it may seem with that November election next year looming.
Would you have any knowledge as to, for what the charter review that needs to be undertaken, if it's achievable in the timeline, if you're looking to put things on the ballot for November 23? Is it achievable?
Oh, sure. Yeah, and I mean, and I guess what I'm saying is I think you can delay it if you think you need to by a month or so, but I wouldn't go much beyond that because you do want that group to have adequate time and not feel rushed at the end of the process.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I would again say, I believe this process should happen. I think it's important, and I think we should make sure that it gets off to a good start where we can all buy into the process. And right now, I don't think we're there yet. I do think that the additional members that would be appointed need to be done together by council and the mayor. And right now, it's just a simple majority of council that appoints. I think it would be more fair, more balanced if we perhaps had council make recommendations and the mayor approves, or vice versa, that the mayor makes recommendations and the council approves, or if the council wants to drive the process with regard to soliciting resumes and reviewing them and having a vote, that nevertheless there is some sort of check there where the mayor can agree or disagree with regard to the three that are appointed. And if they're not agreeable, then you have to find three others or some amount of others. I think that there are a bunch of different ways this could be hashed out in committee. And leaving it to the law director to speak on behalf of anybody, does the community a disservice. We should be working together on it. And, it's an important process. Timeliness is important, but even more important than that is doing it right. So let's find a way to work together and do it right. Treat it on first reading. Let's have a meeting about it between now and the next meeting. Let's see if we can find a way to make some changes that makes this something that we can all be proud of and get off on the right foot. And then have it up for a vote at the next meeting.
Mayor, we have a council of the whole meeting on 5/17. We can review this since we will all be together at that time. And then we'll be on second reading on the first meeting in June.
Okay. I'm probably going to be late to that meeting because I'm in Columbus that day, but I will do what I can to be back here by then. And we can certainly talk before then. Is there anything further anybody'd like to say about this before we move on the agenda?
Yes, thank you.
I'm sorry?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Gould.
I just wanted to say that I hope that you both will have that conversation on the public record. I think it's important to have that conversation on the public record. Frankly, Mayor, I don't think you're paranoid. I mean, last time there was a charter review commission, one of the recommendations was to do away with your position. So I understand why there would be some concerns. I also, frankly, understand why there would be some concerns with this body appointing those individuals. From your perspective, if I were you, and I had relations with this council in the manner that you have relations with this council, I wouldn't want this body picking people who could make that type of recommendation. Have I heard there is any actual attempt to do away with you? Have I heard that we're going to politicize this and pick the people that really dislike the mayor? I have heard none of that. I don't believe it's true at all, but I understand the perspective. I think in honoring of that perspective, we should have a conversation about it, and I appreciate the Vice Mayor being willing to have that conversation. Again, I don't think that he said, she said, you told me to call you, the law director instructed you to call me. I mean, it's just the idea that the law director would say to you, I told Michelle to call you, and you would come here and say that, rather than picking up the phone and calling Michelle and saying, hey, I didn't get a call from you. I want to discuss this. Can we have a conversation? It's just indicative of our relation. You know, sometimes we use things against each other politically rather than doing what we need to do to pick up the phone and talk to each other. It's exactly what I said to Michelle, and I don't mean to harp on this meeting, but you know, it's exactly why I said we need to sit down, we need to meet, we need to talk about these things. And so, you know, we are here in June, or excuse me,
May.
it's been a really long year. We are not there yet. We are here in May, you know, months out from the election. And, you know, the only feedback I'm getting from citizens is they are sick and tired of our bickering, and they are sick and tired of us not getting along, and they are sick and tired of every single thing we do ending in fights, and I'm so tired of it too. And so I hope in whatever way we are able to, in that open meeting, we can come to some resolution and move forward in a way that's going to be helpful, because I think that there are a lot of things that we can recognize mutually the city needs to correct and improve on. And if we can focus on those things in our charter process, we can come to solutions like we did, you know, for the tomorrow's election. You know, I loved hearing from you that council and the mayor decided unanimously. We all support this. You know, you see no bickering about it on social media. Well, I don't think the police should have this many people. You know, it's just, it was great. And I hope we can do more of that in this process.
Thank you, Mr. Gould. I do think it bears some discussion, though, that when it comes to the meeting that I didn't take with you and Michelle over the survey, you included Mr. McConville on that meeting. I asked what the issue was, and you said it was about the survey, and I asked, well, what's the legal issue? And you said about my refusal to issue the survey. If you're implying that I'm breaking the law, well, then I wanted to know what really you were saying before I took that meeting. I asked you to reduce that to writing, and you didn't, and then we didn't have a meeting. So that, I think, is worthy of note. If I'm going to be told that I'm breaking the law by not issuing the survey, which, by the way, had no money appropriated for at that point, I couldn't issue that survey if I wanted, just because the money had been limited to the $500 at the August meeting. Yes, it is. I think the record bears that out. So when it comes to that, you know, I asked if you would go ahead and state what it was that you viewed as the legal issue, and then, you know, I could prepare for that meeting, we could have a discussion. You didn't do that, so we didn't have a meeting. So, you know, when I hear, oh, the mayor refused to meet with us, you know, you accuse me of breaking the law. And I'm entitled to know a little bit more about what I'm getting myself into before I'm ambushed in a meeting like that.
Again, this is exactly what I'm talking about. The last constructive thing we did together was because the law director was present and had us change the number of people that we elected to the commission, the ARB. The fact of the matter is that the law director is a force of reason when it comes to our communications with each other. And I did say, Michelle, if we're going to take $10,000 and put it towards this, going to the CIC, we need to sit down with the mayor and have this discussion first. And yes, the reason that the law director is there is because there are issues with the survey that didn't go out. And that when you said, what are the legal issues about your refusal to send out the survey? That's precisely the issue that the law director was attempting to ameliorate when presenting solutions to us, like sending $10,000 to the CIC. I never once accused you of breaking the law. If I wanted to have a meeting where, and the fact that you would say that I said that is factually inaccurate. Nobody said that. And then what you told me was, well, you think there's a legal issue here? Make your best case. I don't know what attorney worth their suit says, that writes in an email, here are all of my legal arguments, which, by the way, I wasn't making. If I wanted to accuse you of breaking the law, Mayor, I am very capable of making allegations to the appropriate authorities in order to review those things. I wouldn't talk about it in the open record, and I certainly wouldn't invite you to a meeting to discuss your illegal behavior. You know, that's something that council members from other jurisdictions do, you know, making big hay on Facebook and in newspaper articles and in demand letters about the illegality of their colleagues in other areas. I'm not going to participate in that behavior. And when you talk about breaking the law, it is something that I take very seriously. It is something that I have committed my life to, and I promise you, I would not make allegations like that willy-nilly in an email on a side, and I haven't done that. And I really wanted to make that clear, because when you told me I broke the law, I wanted to be clear. I never said that. Those words did not come out of my mouth. I did not write that ever. And if I would have truly believed that, I would have made a referral to the law director in private to make the referral to the correct authorities. We tried to have a meeting to discuss this tactic, which could be seen as fairly hostile to your position. You said, I'm not sending this out. It's a garbage survey. I'm not doing that. We found a way to get it done, and we're going to proceed with that way. But I thought that as the very least we could do is sit down and discuss that matter. So that is why I asked for that meeting. That is why I asked for the law director to be there. And that is what happened.
All you had to do is clarify that. I mean, it's pretty daunting coming from somebody like you, an assistant U.S. attorney, by day, to be told that there's a legal issue. I mean, I think that is something that is especially daunting. It's daunting anyway, but it's especially daunting coming from you. And all you had to do was clarify that, and maybe would have gotten somewhere. So, thank you. And if there's nothing further on this, we'll consider the first reading had. The next item is item E, motion to authorize the posting of the position of Housing and Community Development Administrative Assistant, Housing Admin Employee. Mr. Engelbrecht, you have the floor.
Good evening, House members. You guys hear me? Is it on?
Hello. Okay.
There we go. Good evening. The Housing Community Development Department will be losing the administrative assistant in our department, Deanna Moldavato, to the Cuyahoga County Board of Revisions by the end of May. Deanna brought a wealth of knowledge and experience from years of working under the leadership of the late Judge Raymond L. Pianca within the Cleveland Municipal Court Housing Division. I worked with Deanna myself under Judge Pianca and would be able to attest to her knowledge of housing-related concerns firsthand. Deanna came to the City of University Heights through Safe Built, which has provided the city with administrators and inspectors for both Housing and Community Development Department and the Building Department itself, both being separate entities. The city continues to use Safe Built entirely for the city's building department, which has provided our building commissioner, inspectors, and administrative staff for that department. The city's Housing and Community Development Department is almost fully utilized in-house, with the exception of Inspector Louis Dominic, who comes to us through Safe Built. The position of Administrative Assistant for the Housing and Community Development Department is an important one, considering the functions of the department day to day in answering phone calls and emails, taking walk-ins from the community regarding permits and complaints, and assisting with court filings, among other duties. During the summer months of last year, there were many inspectors who came through the department through Safe Built, while the city's inspector, who was primarily utilized for the point-of-sale inspections, was out on sick leave. Looking back on the carousel of inspectors who came through the department last summer, utilizing Safe Built for the point-of-sale inspector position was a positive for the city, even though it didn't feel like it at the time. Having Safe Built provide the administrative assistant
is a plus. However, it was a plus with Ms. Montalbano. But the department is looking to make its own decision on the position versus having Safe Built make the decision for us. The cost to the city for Deanna's position as an administrative assistant through Safe Built is over $90,000 a year. I request the council make the change allowing for the department to find its own new administrative assistant for the Housing and Community Development Department, while knowing that the cost to the city for hiring a new administrator in-house will offer a cost savings to the city, as the salary range for the position of an administrative assistant is from $40,785.22 to $61,177.83. I also make the request in verifying that the department is now stable and that everyone in the department knows what is required of them, along with the expectations which come along with the department as well. With that, I respectfully submit my request to council for your consideration.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Engelbrecht. Are there any questions for Mr. Engelbrecht?
Mayor, I would like to see this sent to committee for further discussion before we approve this motion to authorize posting.
Well, before we do that, I'd like to point out that we already have, that the current employee has given her notice. She's going to be out May 20th is her last day. And I'd really, to provide continuity in the administrative function in the housing office, I think it's wise that we make this decision tonight. There are things that we do need to do with regard to formally adopting the salary schedule that was before the Strategic Planning Committee early last year. That's where the salary range comes from. But we have an opportunity here to take this position back, make it a city employee position again, which is what we had, which is what we always would have preferred, but because of the pandemic situation we were in the department, we asked Safe Built to provide an employee. We've been paying $45 an hour to Safe Built for that employee. It's roughly $90,000 a year. Granted, Safe Built was taking care of this employee's benefits. Safe Built is handling that person's HR, but we're able to handle benefits. We're able to handle the HR for this person. This is a position that classically had been in-house here at the city, and here we have an opportunity to act now, to post the position, to get somebody in here sooner rather than later and minimize the disruption in the housing department. Otherwise, if we have this position vacant for any significant length of time, it's really going to be disruptive to the housing department at a time when we're entering our busy season with the summer. So we really need to act tonight.
So let me, if I could speak.
Yes, Mr. Rock, please.
Sorry. Just to be clear, so the administrative assistant is an employee of Safe Built, correct? So why is that not Safe Built's problem that this employee is leaving? Isn't it their job, and aren't they contractually bound to provide that position to University Heights? Why are they not doing this legwork? Why are we doing it?
So one of the things that I experienced in the department over the last year was the high rate of turnover. With one of the inspectors being out on sick leave for almost a year, we utilize Safe Built inspectors to cover for the point of sale inspections. I went through 4 or 5 inspectors over the last year just for that position. Also, on the building side, the building department, which I don't run it, that's completely Safe Built. They had 3 administrators who came through within the past year. I like stability. Everybody likes stability when it comes to the person one of the people that you rely on the most. And I'd rather, honestly, not have to go through that within the housing department with, potentially with Safe Built. Not to say that, if they did send us somebody that they wouldn't be leaving, or that, that they'd be leaving the next day. That probably wouldn't happen. But I've just seen a lot, and I'd rather make my own decision who comes in and take a chance for that.
So you mentioned that there was a high turnover in the department, but when we had the department in-house, we had a high turnover as well. We've gone through 8 building commissioners in the last 10 or 12 years, from what I understand. So I'm not sure if the location, whether it be working for Safehold or working for University Heights, is going to yield a different turnover rate. So I'm unsure of that. Can you just go back real quick to the savings? Where did you come up with the number for the savings?
So with the position itself, based on the amount that the city typically hires administrative assistants for, that's between $40,782.22 to $61,177.83. As of today, the city pays Safe Built $90,000 plus a year. That's the cost savings to the city.
Okay, so you're just looking at direct salary then. You haven't factored in health insurance.
If I did factor in health insurance, I'd add maybe an extra $20,000 to $25,000.
Plus contribution to their, uppers,
Probably an
contribution. There's other costs. Now, I'm an operations manager where I'm at, so I know all the costs that affect, the non-government side. We're paid into Social Security, Medicare, insurance, unemployment, workers' comp, all those things. It has a direct impact on, as you increase salaries, those things increase too at like 1.5 or 1.7. So I want to caution your numbers on the savings because it hasn't really taken into account the true cost of that personnel. So that, I think we should look at that when that does come to committee, so we can identify what those exact costs are. So we can look at, we're not looking at apples and oranges. I want to see more consistency so we can understand holistically the whole cost.
Mayor?
I'm sorry, who was that?
That was me.
Oh, Mr. Gould, go ahead.
Thank you. I thought that part of the Safe Build contract required the providing of the administrative assistant. Was there some provision of that contract that placed that at a $45 an hour fee? My understanding was that there was a requirement that employee was part and parcel of the contract.
Yeah, the administrative assistant for the Housing and Community Development Department was something that we added on late in the initial contracting process. It's part of the March 2021 contract. It is at $45 an hour. It's not from the fees. The building techs and the building inspectors, we don't pay extra for those, but we do pay extra for the housing admin, and we pay it at that rate of $45 an hour. And and we did that because at the time we were in no position to hire a housing admin. And when we were in discussions with Safe Build, we let them know that, yes, we would be interested in adding this. No, we don't necessarily want to do this for all time, but at this time we'd like to do it. Now, we're in a much different position now than we were in March of 2021. Mr. Engelbrecht is here running the department. Hiring is something that we can more easily do now. And in my discussions with Safe Build, I've reminded them that this was not a position that we ever really intended to have them take. It's just that we were in a position where we really needed the help. They're willing to leave it in the contract as something that they backfill if we needed the backfilling. But here is an opportunity to take back a position that isn't part of the direct building department function, but is somebody who actually answers to Mr. Engelbrecht, doesn't actually answer to Rick LeConte, who's the admin, or who is the chief building official. And while we did have a revolving door of building commissioners during the pandemic, and there have been a number of folks even before the pandemic, simply because most building commissioners tend to be very senior people in the profession, and therefore they're never anywhere for very long. This position isn't like that. This position is more like some of the people that we had that were career people at the city, including one that retired from here. And this is a position where we potentially can bring somebody in who hopefully would promote some stability, we have control over that person again. Whether Safe Built writes their paycheck or University Heights writes their paycheck, they're answering to the director of housing and community development. It makes more sense to leave Safe Built siloed on the building department side of things and to take this position back.
Thank you.
And this is an opportunity to do that. But, because of administration and efficiency of administration, we wanted to come to you now so that we could get this posted this week and start accepting applications on a rolling basis and begin interviewing people right away.
I also had a question for Mr. Kennedy. The $90,000 amount, did you have a chance to review that? Is that in line with what your understanding is we've paid Safe Build for the administrative position the last year?
I have not looked into that, Mr.
Okay. And then do you have, in your understanding of kind of the benefits that we put in, what the addition to a base salary of $40,000 to $61,000 would be?
Benefits usually increase the base salary by about 30%. That includes OPERS, medical insurance.
Okay. So if you're looking at additional, let's look at the 61 number, an additional 18,000 to bring it up to about 73, or 79, excuse me, we're still at a savings of about $10,000 if that $90,000 is correct.
Correct.
And would you be able to do a calculation based on the data that you have available to you of how much we paid for the administrative position based on, I guess, invoices that you've received?
Yes, sir. I'd have to go back and pull all those invoices to determine how many hours that we're getting billed for at that rate, but yeah.
Okay. And Mr. Engelbrecht, tell us about your candidate. Who do you want into this position?
To put, once we actually start interviewing, I'd be looking for somebody with experience dealing with the public, somebody with experience dealing with people under circumstances where they may be a bit irate, dealing with people who, from all walks of life, dealing with inspectors, dealing with realtors, dealing with me, dealing with everything that comes with the department, and not that dealing with me is a bad thing. But somebody who's seasoned, has experience with people, has experience within housing, all different forms of housing when it comes to rental housing, when it comes to point of sale inspections, when it comes to compliance with city code. Somebody that would be able to learn citizen serve if they don't know it already quickly, and somebody who could help move the department forward.
And while certainly, you would open up this process and there would be a opportunity to, make application as a director, have you identified any individuals who you would invite to apply for that position?
I have.
And without giving names, I think would be inappropriate at this point. Could you tell us a little bit about that person's experience and why they fit into, that role that you just described?
So, one of the people that I've been looking at has experience with, again, pretty much all different walks of life. Worked at CMHA for 11 years, worked at Housing Court for 4, has worked with different realtors, has worked with Charter One Bank. Pretty extensive experience with that, along with being able to learn different processing or different computer programs, which would be required of the position.
So the thing that I'd say is that, I do have some questions on the finance. I understand why we would want this to go to committee. I'm a little torn as well, because one of the things that I know about organizations is that leadership boards need to be able to trust their directors. And we have really excellent directors here. If I had Dennis Kennedy coming to me and saying, I need this person, I need this position, here's who I want, I know, based on everything that Dennis Kennedy has done, that we would have that that would be the right person. I trust his judgment. Here too, I mean, if there is any question about Mr. Engelbrecht's commitment and talent when it comes to revising a department that has had some profound challenges in the past, we have better relations with the court, we have better relations with the prosecutors, we have better relations with the individuals who are coming into our city to do business, individuals who are buying in University Heights. And so when I hear him come and say, this is the person that I need, this is the position that I need, I trust that. And I think that, you know, I put a lot of weight behind that.
I wouldn't argue that fact.
Yeah, certainly.
That's what I'm saying.
The question that I have really, I mean, I don't care if it comes from, if it's the same money, I don't care if we're paying money to Safe Build or to this individual. And if it's an in-house position, frankly, I see no benefit in it being a contracted position rather than an in-house position. What I would suggest perhaps with this is that, you know, I don't know that, Mr. Engelberg, I'm sorry, the finance director hasn't verified your $90,000 number. I would be comfortable authorizing this position to post so long as the eventual salary for that individual, base plus any other benefit, is no more than whatever the amount Mr. Kennedy is able to verify is the amount that we paid to Safe Build. So if that number is $90,000 and you want to hire this person with a base plus benefit of $80,000, wonderful. If you want to hire them with a base plus benefit of $100,000, then you wouldn't be authorized to do that. But I just, you know, I want to authorize the position to post because of the trust and respect that I have for you. But I also want to be mindful of what we are always mindful of, which is our fiduciary duty to the city and its citizens, and not authorize a position, create a position with such short notice that goes beyond whatever the amount is that we're paying.
Mayor?
Yes, Mrs. Blankenham.
I'm agreeing with everything you're saying. Certainly, we all have seen the remarkable good work that Mr. Engelbrecht has done, and he and I work very well together. One of my concerns, I mean, the biggest one is I want to make sure that financially this is a smart thing to do. We had, 25 people leave, the city. So Safe Built came in, but this is not the first time that Safe Built wouldn't be fulfilling their obligations as, with their contract. They're supposed to provide that person, and now they're not. So I agree that for us to have control over that full-time employee gives us more control, is easier for you. I have concerns about, yet again, about Safe Built and the contract we have with them. And do we amend that contract at some point? This is why I really think it needs more discussion.
Yeah. Well, I think your point about the contract itself definitely needs more conversation. And I think the Safe Build we can bring the Safe Build contract back to committee and start to discuss some of the details so that we're all on the same page. But I would just, to your point, I don't think that the solution we have to come up with for that is therefore we don't do this, because I think what we see is that moving this person in-house, I don't think any of us are satisfied with necessarily the details of the contract and how it's happening, but I think this is a real step. I mean, in any organization, leadership wants to build capacity.
Absolutely.
And if you have this, what was always meant to be a kind of a stopgap measure, then here we are starting to rebuild capacity in this department, and I think it's a really great thing. Mr. McConville, can you just share a little bit about how we would phrase this? If the idea is to have this post, but not to create an in-house position that's beyond the amount that we're paying to Safe Build, what would we do to achieve that?
I think the way you worded it before was a way of doing that, to clarify that the motion is permission to post at an amount of total compensation and remuneration that does not exceed the amount expended annually on the admin assistant through Safe Build.
That'll be my motion.
Is that a motion?
That is a motion.
Okay.
And I'll second.
Very good. We have a motion by Mr. Gould and second by Mrs. Bleinfeld. I do want to just clarify that Safe Built did not in any way fall short of its obligation to try to provide somebody to us. When the notice was provided, they informed me and said we will begin work right away to get somebody in here. So it's not that we're trying to do this because Safe Built has done something wrong. It's because we saw this as an opportunity to take the position back. So I told Safe Built, after discussing it with Mr. Engelbrecht, hold off for now. We'd like to make this change. And they were open to the change.
Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Kennedy.
I just did a very informal review of the last 8 invoices, and the housing administration expense is a little under, on average, $8,000 a month.
Okay.
So if you use 8 as your benchmark, that's 96,000. And consistent with the concern, the next item on the agenda is to reduce the contract line by the prorated amount for this year. That's $54,000 according to Mr. Engelbrecht. So that way, if those bills kept coming in, we'd have to come back and request council to increase the appropriation.
And those administrative portions of the bills are only for this position, nothing else?
Correct.
Correct.
So if we could just go back to the full 12, and whatever that number is, so my motion would remain the same, and if you can continue to do that analysis in a more formal setting, all the way back to 12 months, so we have a year. We haven't had them, do we have them for a full year for 2021?
No, we started in March.
So now we have a year of data that you can go back to?
Correct.
Okay, so that'll be
Thank
my
you, Mr.
motion. and
Thank
I
you,
think-
Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. I also love working with a bunch of colleagues that when you started naming numbers, we all went for our phones so we could start calculating until you gave us a tabulation, so I feel in good company.
And the service charge for that is now $46.50, not $45. So it's gone up.
Yeah, there was a, all right. Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Gould, a second by Mrs. Blankfeld. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Blanco?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Okay, very good, motion carries. Which then takes us to item F, ordinance 2022-28, amending ordinance 2022-15 and ordinance 2022-19, authorizing permanent appropriations, current and other expenditures of the City of University Heights, Ohio for the period commencing January 1, 2022 and ending December 31st, 2022, and declaring an emergency. On emergency, Mr. Kennedy, you kind of tipped your hand as to what you were going to say here, but let's go ahead and say it again.
Okay, the general fund is budgeted by department. So in that the contract expenses are charged to the building department, we would have to reduce the building department's appropriation and then move that into the housing department's salary line. That's what this particular amendment does. There's no net increase to either the general fund or our total appropriations. But the way the budget is filed, I do have to file this with the Budget Commission.
Right, so this just funds the position that we just authorized the Housing Community Development Director to post and hire, correct?
For the balance of the year.
For the
yes.
balance of the year, yes. Are there any questions for Mr. Kennedy?
Mr. Kennedy, how did you come up, Mayor?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy, how did you come up with that number if you had, I'm just wanting to understand, the dollar amount, is that's the $54,000 increase? Is that how, I'm just making sure I'm following
That's-
your.
Mr. Gold, that's the prorated amount that Mr. Engelbrecht gave me for, based on when they expected to fill the position.
Okay. So if you're in your analysis, the dollar amount is different, you'll need to come back to us to transfer that different dollar
We'll
amount.
put that in like a year-end change if necessary.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion to approve? And
So moved.
it would be on emergency.
So moved on emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Gould. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we'll take the second from Mr. Cooney. Any discussion on the motion? Well, then we'll take 2 votes. Mrs. Thomas first on the suspension of the rules.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Blanco?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Okay, and then on the main motion.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Blankenfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Okay, very good. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Engelbrecht. Next is item G, motion to accept lease extension for City Hall Annex offices, 2245 Orangeville Center Road, Suite 105, with a monthly rental cost of $1,575, beginning June 1st, 2022, and expiring May 31st, 2023. There is a memo in the packet that I wrote, but just for the record, for the benefit of everyone here, Spalding Leasing has agreed to extend the city's lease of 2245 Orangeville Center Road, Suite 105, which serves as the city's annex. The current lease option expires on May 31st, 2022. That's at the end of this month. The annex has several ongoing uses. It is the location of the city's Economic Development Department and is used up to 3 days a week by the finance director. The annex is the city's only fully ADA compliant conference space and serves as the site of various meetings among the several departments. It is used occasionally for public meetings as an alternative to this space, the Wiley space, and as we negotiate for third-party human resources services, it is intended to have an HR professional on site weekly in a secure space with private meeting space, and the annex is the proposed site for that use. The parties entered the original lease on April 20th, 2018, commencing June 1st, 2018. The first 3 years included payment for the build-out of the annex, one option year for the period of June 2021 through May of 2022 was included at the rate of $1,518 a month. This lease extension extends all terms previously agreed to by the parties with a new rent rate of $1,575 to begin June 1st, 2022 and run through May 31st, 2023. Law Director Luke McConville has reviewed the extension and finds it acceptable as to form. The administration therefore asks for a motion to approve and authorize the mayor to execute the extension to continue the lease for another year. Thank you. I didn't include it here, but during the build out, our rent rate was it fluctuated a little bit, but it was between $1,700 and $1,800 a year. When we pay the rent, there is a common area electric fee of about $60 that gets added to the bill. So I'm sure Mr. Kennedy could more precisely provide what that is, but at the $1,518 a month, the rent with the additional fees is just under $1,600 and has been for the last year. Are there any questions about this item? And if not, is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, motion by Mrs. Weiss. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Sacks. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mrs. Thomas, we call the roll.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Blankenfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Okay, very good. Motion's approved. Next is item H, motion authorizing purchase of WatchGuard body-worn cameras in the amount of $39,721. Chief Rogers.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, Chief, please, you may proceed.
So the body-worn camera proposal before you tonight, Council, is intended to replace the system we've been utilized since 2016, which has now become obsolete and antiquated. The equipment is no longer made and it is no longer supported either. The proposal here, the recommendation is to migrate to a body-worn camera system through WatchGuard, Motorola Solutions, under state contract bidding and pricing, which would provide for 16 body-worn camera units, including all hardware, 2022 cloud-based data storage, annual fees, docks, mounting attachments, and replacement batteries, in an amount of $39,721.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Chief. Are there any questions for Chief Rogers? And if not, is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, motion by Mrs. Weiss. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Blankfeld. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mrs. Thomas, we call the roll.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Blankfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Rod?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Okay, very good. Motion carries and is approved. Next is item I, motion authorizing the purchase of 2 new 2022 Ford Utility Explorers through the statewide Ford and additional necessary equipment for a total not to exceed $66,057.84 per vehicle and $132,115.68 for both vehicles. Chief Rogers.
So there would possibly be needing an amendment for the total cost regarding some specifics that are identified in Safety Committee earlier, where we were notified as of this morning of a $1,924 price increase based on some of the quotes that we already had. That would create a total dollar amount of $134,039.68. It would also be my recommendation that, given there's $135,390 appropriated in the capital fund for these 2 vehicles purchased, and how the prices are constantly changing, that to cover the amount of time in the next couple of days, we can process a purchase order through the finance department that we're possibly approved for the entire capital dollar amount of $135,390.
So the full capital amount, could you repeat that? 135?
$135,390.
Okay, $135,390. Was that Mr. Gould?
It was.
Yes, you may proceed.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to amend item agenda I, motion authorizing the purchase of 2 new, actually, I don't have to, do I need to amend if I'm just making the motion? It's a
Well,
motion is written.
I don't know if we need to amend the agenda.
I can just make the motion.
Just make the
yeah.
motion if you're ready.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to authorize the purchase of 2 new 2022 Ford Utility Explorers through statewide Ford and additional necessary equipment for a total amount not to exceed $135,390 for both vehicles.
Okay, very good. We have a motion by Mr. Gould accordingly. Is there a second?
I'll second.
A second by, was that Mrs. Sacks?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mrs. Thomas, we call the roll.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Blankfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Rod?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Okay, very good. Motion carries. Next is item J, authorization for signal service for the repair of the Orangeville Center Road mid-block crossing signals not to exceed the amount of $15,561. Chief.
This expense is the result of a traffic accident that occurred last October, which damaged the mid-block crossing signs at 2384 Warrensville Center Road. As you can see, there's a quote attached from Signal Service for this dollar amount. Finance Department has received a check from Geico for this reimbursement, and at this time I'm requesting authorization for Signal Service to conduct these repairs for this dollar amount.
So moved.
Okay, motion by Mr. Gould, second by Mr. King. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Mrs. Thomas, we call the roll.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Blankfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Rod?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
A very good motion carries. Next is item K, motion to award 3-year pavement marking project to be awarded to JD Striping and Services, Inc. in the amount of $77,067.80 for 2022. Chief.
I would add that from this evening's earlier Safety Committee meeting, there was discussion about removing one of the items from the bid proposal that would reduce the total cost for 2022 for line striping to $49,067.
Oh, 76. 49.
76.
76.
I'm sorry, yeah,
Yeah.
49,060, 76 is it?
I'm sorry, let's get the number. 49,000.
I'm gonna just double compute it once more, because
Everyone go to your calculators. 77,067.80 minus $28,000 was 49,067.80. Mayor,
6-7.
okay, 6.7. Mayor, count.
Six again.
What?
Did you say 7.6 or 6.7?
6.7.
Where are you getting that?
6.7.
0.76.
He's working hard on this, he did it earlier.
0.8 minus the 28,000.
It's 28,000. It's
Yeah.
6.7. There's a whole number. You're taking 28 from 77.
It's no
The-
math.
The 6.7 doesn't go back. John, look at,
No, I said $77,076 minus 28,000.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's 49,077.
67. It's 67. Look at the numbers.
77067.
Read the numbers one by one.
77076.8.
No, sir, that's not the number.
That's the number right here on the sheet.
You're reading the wrong sheet.
Huh?
Read the
Look at the agenda item.
Well, the agenda, this is the bid tabulation.
Okay, if the bid tabulation, if there's a discrepancy between the bid tabulation and the agenda, the bid tabulation should control, and we should use the number John you just said.
76.
So,
We'll round it up to
I know.
80, my goodness.
I think everybody's math was good, but we were talking different numbers, so if it's all the same to everyone, why don't we say $49,076.80, like Mr. Rock just said.
Mayor, Mr. Rock helped us come to a place where we understood that we don't have an immediate need necessarily for the repaving of certain parking lots, but that the administration would be able to come back if at a later time the police chief or his staff or you had a belief that we needed to increase that number. So with that understanding, I'll make a motion to award a 3-year pavement marking project and to award JD Striping and Services Incorporated in the amount of $77,076.80.
Wait 1 second, though. I thought we were
Oh,
making...
no, it's $49,076.80.
Yes, and then it was supposed to be for 1 year. We're not
For 1 year.
considering year 2, so it's not, we're not motion, the motion should not be to award for a 3-year payment
Yeah,
project.
you're right.
Yeah.
Amended my motion for a 1-year pavement marking project, $49,076.80.
Sure.
Allegedly.
Purported strike.
Well, that's just your opinion.
All right.
We have a motion. And not wanting to get too far in the weeds, Mr. McConville. It's a 3-year pavement marking project contract because there was a bid for 3 years, even though we all agree that we only want to do the first year of the bid. So do we want to say it's a 3-year pavement marking project and that is the amount only for this year, or is it sufficient to say, as Mr. Gould just said, that we're doing it for 1 year?
For clarification, the contract, the bidding contract indicates that it has to be renewed by the city every year, just as it did last year.
Right.
So that's built
The
into
way
the
these have
agreement.
always worked is we always have the opportunity to opt out.
I mean, basically, we're saying right now we're going to opt out. I mean, in advance.
Yeah.
But the concern is that the public body needs to award the contract. So there's a 3-year contract. I think what we're making the differentiation between is that we are awarding a 3-year contract and funding it for 1 year. Would you be comfortable with that language of saying we are awarding a 3-year contract because we have to award the 3-year contract because that's the contract that we have, but we're funding it for only 1 year, meaning that there's no other action that could happen from it?
No, why can't we
There's no
exercise
there's no
the first
downside.
year?
There's no downside to authorizing the 3-year contract.
Okay, so can we...
Because the way the contract works is you can opt out of either year 2 or year 3 or both year 2 and year 3.
The subsequent years' the work cannot be done until I were to come back before council.
Okay, can we amend the motion to say that we will make a motion to exercise year 1 of the 3-year paving marking project in the amount not to exceed?
I can say that, but I think the body still needs to award the contract. Meaning we went to bid for 3 years, we took bids for 3 years, we have a contract for 3 years, and the body needs to award that 3-year contract to the service provider.
I think we're getting caught up in semantics, because remember, you can only spend money that's been appropriated. And you're appropriating a specific dollar amount, and we cannot spend another dollar on this contract until you have appropriated it.
Well, but do you think it's semantics to say the word award, or do we not need to say that?
I'm sorry, what's your
You
question?
said we were getting caught in semantics, and I just wanted to ensure that if the
That was to reassure Mr. Rock. I think you need
Okay.
to award the 3-year contract
Okay, I just wanted to make
for
sure.
the dollar amount. And my point is that council, the administration cannot have the work done in year 2 prior to coming back to you as council for your appropriation of funds.
But can the vendor come back to us and say that you awarded a 3-year contract, and although we're only exercising year 1, and we've not made mention that we're not going to exercise year 2 and 3,
No, 'cause
could we be liable for paying those 2 years?
We will have the ability to opt out.
And that's stated in
That's in the contract,
Okay.
yeah.
They also have to be given a notice to proceed annually after it's approved by council.
Strike my motion. I'd like to make a motion to award a 3-year pavement marking project to be awarded to JD Striping and Services Incorporated, and to fund said contract for 1 year in the amount of $49,076.80.
That's fine. And just one other point, just so you understand the legal protection, is that we are different in a contractual setting from a normal, say, corporation, in that if you have not appropriated the dollars, there is no cause of action that can be brought. They cannot force you to spend the taxpayer dollar. So you have that as a backstop. But in addition to all that, there's very specific language in the contract that essentially puts that concept into writing.
Okay, that makes me more comfortable then. And Chief, when you circle back with, who is this, JD Striping and Services, will you make it known that we're only exercising the first year, and until we have a better grasp on what's happening in the financial markets in the next few years, we're not going to pursue that at this time? I mean, it may be that we do it, but, at this point in time. Okay.
That seems reasonable. Okay, very good. All right, so we've got the motion. Did we get a second?
No.
No, okay, we
I'll
need a second. We have a second by Mr. Rock. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Mrs. Thomas, we call the roll.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Glanville? Aye. Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Okay, very good. Motion carries. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Next is item L, motion to enter executive session for the purpose of discussing legal proceedings, personnel, and real estate matters. The administration does not have anything this evening for seeking an executive session. So moving right along then, we will go to number 9, reports and communications from directors. And we'll start with finance. Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Mayor. Nothing really formal reports. We continue to work on the audit, and I'm putting together a schedule of revenue and expense through the end of April for the strategic plan meeting later this week. Those are going to be draft numbers, because obviously we're not going to have everything closed by Wednesday, but they'll be in the ballpark, and everything so far looks good. So, and I will follow up based on the chore related to Safe Built as well, and get that out to everybody.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Any questions for Mr. Kennedy? Very good. Director of Law, Luke McConville.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to the Safety Committee for your comments on the Solicitors and Peddlers Ordinance. We will turn those around and have those back in front of you prior to your next committee meeting, and in time to have it placed on the meeting agenda for the first meeting in June. The mayor mentioned during his report that notices of intent to acquire were issued to the owners of the core retail parcel and the garage parcel over at University Square. That is going to kick off a fairly intensive period of activity in the law department to draft the pleadings for those lawsuits and to conduct negotiations with a potential developer. We anticipate that shortly after the 30-day period, those suits will be filed. We're optimistic that we may hear in the meantime from parties who have heretofore been reluctant to engage in meaningful discussions. In addition, I anticipate needing an executive session at your next meeting to update you on pending litigation, but at the moment, we don't really have anything to report. And that concludes my report.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. McConville. Any questions for Mr. McConville? Seeing none. Public Safety, Police, Chief Rogers?
No report.
Okay, no report. Thank you, Chief Rogers. Public Safety, Fire, Chief Perko.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. 2 items to report. One, we're just finishing up the hydrant flushing in the neighborhood. The bulk of the work's been done. We have a couple hydrants just to catch up on this week, but it'll be completed and signs will be taken down until the fall. And then secondly, to echo the sentiment by the housing director and the importance of our administrative assistants, I'd like to thank the fire department's assistant, Kim. She's completed our annual report for 2021. I have a limited supply of the hard copies, but I will email all of council a PDF document, and feel free to reach out with any questions. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Chief Perko. Any questions for Chief Perko? I'm sure everybody looks forward to receiving the report. Thank you, Chief. Service, Mr. Picorni.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Only one item to report on, and that is loose leaf collection was completed on the 30th of April. That also includes loose brush. So from here forward, we will be requiring residents to bag their lawn refuse and to cut and tie their brush in 4-foot lengths, no more than 50 pounds in a bottle.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Picorni. Any questions for Mr. Picorni? All right, thank you. We then turn to Housing and Community Development, Mr. Engelbrecht.
Yes, grass cutting by the city's contractor will begin this weekend, so you guys should be seeing a lot of yellow tags out at the houses that need grass cutting. Other than that, I have nothing further.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Engelbrecht. Any questions for Mr. Engelbrecht? Seeing none, we move to City Engineer, Mr. Cheney.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, I apologize. I led you down the path with that 67 verse 76. That was my mistake. I transposed the numbers in my letter, and I apologize for that, leading you down the path. 3 items to report on. They're all construction items. Started construction today on the Cedar Road sewer repairs between Thane and Brockway. The zone is set up in the middle of the road. You have to be on either side to go by, 1 lane in each direction. They saw cut today and they'll be digging tomorrow. There's 4 sewer repairs to do in that area. Second one is the Traymore water line project. The pipe is delivered. It's sitting there on site. And they will begin putting in the above ground bypass piping tomorrow. That's a 90-day contract. Let's go back to Cedar Road repairs. That's a 21-day contract. They'll be out of there by Memorial Day. Traymore Road is 90 days. The big project is ODOT's project on Cedar Road. If you've been in that area of town, you've driven through it. It's between Miramar and Green Road right now. And they are working on the South Euclid side. Traffic is maintained on the University Heights side, 1 lane in each direction. That zone there will last till about the 4th of July, and then they'll switch over to the west side of the town, and they'll be going from Taylor Road to Fenwick. Same process, doing one side of the road first, then the other side. So, we have the orange barrels out. Next week, the mayor and the service director and I, Jeff McCorney, are meeting with Dominion to talk about their projects coming up this year, and I don't have anything to report until after we go to that meeting. That's all I have.
All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Cheney. Any questions for Mr. Cheney? All right, seeing none. Moving right along, communications and civic engagement, Mr. Cook.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. One probably late this week, early next, and it'll continue as the project moves down the streets. Oh, and one other thing, not that was my report, just one thing, Mosaic should be hitting mailboxes by the end of next week, definitely before next time we gather like this. That's it.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cook. Any questions for Mr. Cook? All right, economic development, Mrs. Strucker. Okay, no report. Thank you, Mrs. Strucker. We now turn to the reports of standing committees and taking of action thereon. Building and housing, Mrs. Blainfeld.
Thank you, Mayor. Just briefly, May 16th and June 20th, we anticipate having meetings of the Building and Housing Committee just prior to regular scheduled council meetings.
Yes, I'm sorry, what was the date?
May 16th and June 20th, as they're always scheduled each month to be before the regularly scheduled council meeting the second day.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Blainfeld. Community outreach, Mr. King.
Yes, the Tech Advisory Committee met on, or the Commission met on May 13th. Had a great discussion. Thank you, Councilwoman Sachs, for attending and providing feedback. Drafts have been sent out by the co-chairs, Ms. Hudak and Jan Cheng, and appreciate the feedback that we've already gotten from other council members. We're hoping to get a final draft, a final document ready for next Wednesday, so it can make the council packet and place a motion on the agenda for the May 16th meeting to go for a vote on that, to send it out. So that's it.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. King. Economic development, Mr. Rock.
Yes, Mayor. So you mentioned in your mayor's report that we will be working with ZoneCo on the new zoning code. I'm really excited about that starting. So our committee could commence to create the steering committee for the zoning code. So we'll I'll work with Kelly to get some dates so we can at least formalize the committee. So when the work's ready for us to review, will be formalized. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure when that will phase in, but we're going to get this project planned, and Mrs. Drucker will let you know.
Right,
okay.
At least we'll be ready.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Rock. Finance, Mrs. Weiss.
No report, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Recreation, Mr. Cooney.
No report, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Safety, Mr. Gould.
Thank you, Mayor. For the start of door knocking season in July, we should have peddler and solicitor ordinance as soon to be defined in addition, or an edited version by the law director. My thought is to have the people from the Do Not Knock organization come and do a presentation at our next council meeting just to discuss their marketing plans and how this can get pushed out to the community, so that in the event that it's approved at our first meeting, I may say July, and our first meeting of June, that we will be able to start pushing that marketing material to the community. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Gould. Service and Utilities, Mrs. Sachs.
Thank you, Mayor. We're in the process of identifying a date for the next Service and Utilities Committee meeting. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mrs. Sachs. Committee of the Whole, Mrs. Weiss.
No report, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Weiss. That leads us to reports of special committees and taking action thereon. Are there any reports? Seeing none, is there any unfinished or miscellaneous business? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn by Mr. Gould, a second by Mrs. Weiss. Please note that the next regular meeting is May 16, 2022 at 7 p.m. right here at Wiley. Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Sachs?
Aye.
Mrs. Blankville?
Aye.
Mr. Rott?
Aye.
Mr. Weiss?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Very good. We are adjourned.